introduction of the foundation that you need to practice Tantra well. And what is Tantra? We'll talk a little bit about that. And we're going to go more deeply into it in 4 sessions on this weekend. So 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. So there is a session Saturday before lunch, 10 to noon, Saturday and Sunday, and then 2 to 4 after lunch or after in the afternoon on Sunday. And so tonight we'll go to about 9 o'clock, or we'll see how far we get if people aren't too tired of looking at the screen, right? Yesterday I was in a webinar for an hour and a half on faith leaders training in dealing with violence during the elections, of how we can show up to help with our faith communities. And it was really interesting. But I've been on so many Zoom screens, as most of you, that after a while, it's a different way to get information. You need a break. So we're going to start by getting our mind in the right space. And Shanti Deva has some motivational prayers we're going to start with. So I think if somebody is going to share their screen from Shanti Deva with the prayers, and we can follow along. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
And shall I go ahead and recite, Venerable?
Sure, yeah, and then we can all, feel free, we can join in, but feel free to recite. Or actually, if you want, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. So we'll do the verses for the 8 auspicious noble ones, which has been recommended by Lama Zopa Rinpoche before starting any activity. Om, to you auspicious ones, dwelling in the 10 directions realms, where all that appears and exists is perfectly pure, spontaneous in nature, to the entire noble collection of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I prostrate. May all be auspicious for us. O King of illumination, intention to accomplish aims with steadfast power, glorious adornment of loving kindness, supremely glorious one renowned for virtue, greatly renowned as consideration for all, glorious renown that is valor as noble as Mount Meru, glorious renown that is consideration for all sentient beings, and glorious renown that is valor which causes contentment. Hearing your mere names increases fortune and glory. I prostrate to the 8 Sugatas. O youthful Manjushri, glorious Vajrapani, powerful Avalokita, protector Maitreya, Chitigarbha, Nivada Navishkampin, Akasha Garbha, and supreme Arya Samantabhadra, you beautifully carry your hand implements, the Udpala flower, Vajra, white lotus, Naga wood, jewel, moon, sword, and sun, supreme of auspiciousness and glory. To the 8 Bodhisattvas I prostrate. The jeweled precious parasol, the auspicious golden fish, the excellent vase pouring forth desired objects, the beautiful Kamala lotus, the conch of great renown, the glorious never-ending knot, the always flying banner of victory, and the powerful wheel of transformation. O you for whom these 8 supreme precious symbols serve as hand ornaments, you goddesses who make offerings to the victors of all times in every direction and cause them delight. Lasya and so forth, by bringing you to mind, you increase our glory. To the 8 auspicious goddesses I prostrate. Mahabrahma, source of bliss, son of non-craving, thousand-eyed one, king Dhritarashtra, Vidudaka, Vidupaksham, the lord of Nagas, and Vaishravana, each holding your divine symbol, wheel, trident, lance, vajra, veena, sword, stupa, and victory banner. You increase the virtue, goodness, and fortune for those who reside in the 3 realms. To the 8 worldly guardians I prostrate. May any activity we undertake here today, obstacles and misfortunes having been pacified, accomplish our desired goals and increase in glory in accordance with our wishes. May fortune, happiness, and prosperity abound. And we will do more prayers tomorrow, but for tonight, we're going to engage in taking refuge and generating bodhichitta.
Jennifer, should we do the Buddha, the verses for the Buddha? Would you do the teachings? Yeah, that would be great.
The
Shakyamuni Buddha praise.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
And the full one or just this one, Venerable? Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Just that verse.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Great. To the founder, endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, know of the world, supreme God of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, know of the world, supreme God of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, know of the world, supreme God of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge.
And then maybe just 3 of the mantras, Shakyamuni Buddha mantra.
Great. I'm sorry, it's not here, but hopefully
okay.
most will know it. Yeah.
Taya ta mune mune maha mune soha. Taya ta mune mune maha mune soha. Taya ta mune mune maha mune soha. And the mandala offering.
Okay, we'll do it in English. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Kaniryatayami.
Thank you. So we're at taking refuge in generating bodhichitta, and these are all really important prayers that set up your foundation to receive the teachings, to be able to listen to the teachings in the right way. So when we recite this in English, these 4 lines, consider what you know about refuge and bodhicitta. Many of you have taken refuge. Many of you have heard my teaching on these 4 verses, these 4 lines before, how it contains the entire path. So let's really think about the meaning of the words and setting up our motivation. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. And one-time chanting in the phonetics, O Sangye Chodanso Kicho Namla Janchu Badu Dagni Gyab Suchi Dagi Chin Yingi Peso Namgi Jola Pencher Sange Drup Parsho. Just take a moment to consider your motivation for this evening. And in that last line, to benefit all sentient beings. Can I become a Buddha? Can I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings? Just to allow that to settle into your heart for a moment. And put up your own motivation against that. Did you show up this evening? Was it any different than that purpose? And it's okay if it is different. It's just, can we a little bit align ourselves? Allow the mind to open, to extend a little bit beyond the boundaries of our own interests. To think of all living beings, how we could be a benefit to them by understanding more about Tantra, by understanding the foundation of how to set ourselves up to receive a tantric empowerment and to practice Tantra properly. So what can that do for you by practicing Tantra, by understanding the fundamentals of getting ready for that experience? Can it quicken your path to enlightenment? Because if it quickens your path to enlightenment, that can get you helping more beings perfectly more quickly. So you can just think about that ability for you to be of more service, more expansive, kinder, and have the knowledge to best advise, to best think, to best say, to best act for every single being, every moment you breathe. Please consider that, and as you do, set a good motivation for our time together. And I'd like you to just imagine right now, just think of the space that you're in, most probably your home. For a lot of us, it's comfortable, might be subdued. And begin to expand your awareness beyond yourself and your space to the external environment, the streets outside your house, perhaps other apartments where you're living in the building, other houses, the neighborhood, the shops, people walking around. Just zoom out for a moment. And think if you in this space are in perfect health, perfect radiance, perhaps even appearing in a more youthful form. How delightful that might be for some of you. No aching joints, no diminished eyesight or hearing, no graying or white hair. And think of your own home and space or room as like a divine palace. And as you begin to scan out to the other apartments, the other houses, the neighborhood, the shops and the people walking around, people driving by, everything is reflecting this radiance in a perfect form. Everything is pleasing. But sometimes internal to our system, there are blockages that prevent us from experiencing this, obscurations. So take a moment now, just imagining this radiance is still there of yourself, your environment, but just slowly start to deepen your inhalation and exhalation as you bring more of your awareness to that breath. And to clean out some of those channels for us to be able to listen better, perhaps, or think about things in a better way, reflecting in a more positive way. Let's do the 9-round breathing. It's a way to clear out the subtle channels in your body. So let's begin. We're going to inhale through our right nostril. You can close off your left nostril. As you bring the air into the left nostril, imagine it coming down. And then we're going to exhale through the left nostril while you close off the right nostril. This circular breathing. We're going to do that 3 times. Imagine you're releasing anger and hostility and hatred from your mind. 3 times. And just reversing that now for the second round, we're going to close off the right nostril. Inhale deeply through the left. And as you exhale, close off the left nostril, exhaling deeply through the right, releasing and lessening attachment and desire from your mind 3 times. In the third segment, we're going to breathe in through both nostrils. Exhale deeply through both nostrils. And imagine you're lessening ignorance and confusion in your mind 3 times. Just allow the mind to settle on the breath for a moment as you once again just consider yourself in a radiant basis, your environment reflecting that radiance, manifesting that radiance as well. Perfect, pure being in a perfectly pure environment. And what if you wanted to expand the mind more out to the whole planet, having it again reflecting this radiance? And just bringing your visualization back into you, seated here in your space. You back in your ordinary form. Just feel grounded, present, and consider for a moment how you'd like to show up for the teachings. Have you turned on the button of active listening? What kind of pot are you? We're going to talk about that in a moment. What kind of pot are you, if you're familiar with that teaching? What does your pot look like? Is it a proper kind of vessel to receive the teachings? And slowly, when you're ready, just slowly open your eyes. And just notice for a moment, just observe any thoughts, any experiences arising. I'll just ask for a moment. What kind of pot are you? Whoops. What's your pot like? Okay, let me explain this teaching about the pot. Most of you are familiar, but some people are newer. No problem. When we show up at a teaching, and when I was first learning Dharma, what's also funny tonight is I never know in my neighborhood what the 9 kids that live on my side of the street are doing. They're kids from the age of 4 to, I think, 12. They're wonderful kids. And sometimes it's very silent, but it is Friday and they've been inside most of the day, most of the week going to school. So they are playing at the house right next door. You can see through my curtains here. And I think one of them just said before when I started, they could see through, what's Amy doing? You know, what, because they can kind of see this setup with the bright light, and they're very sweet. So there's a little bit of activity next door in my pure realm, okay, pure kids. The pot teaching is, and the other part, when I showed up at teachings, they talked about the analogy of the Buddha. You want to see the teacher as the Buddha. This is not about me being on a trip, but when I would come to teachings, especially with a highly realized being like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, to try to see them, the Buddha is like a doctor. And basically I'm sick. So we come with our delusions, right? It's a type of imbalance or sickness. I'm not saying that you're really ill or there's a problem with you, but basically we have some situations and issues we'd like to sort out. So that's why we go to the doctor, okay? And then the doctor, the Buddha, disseminates teachings. They give us the medicine, okay? And then there's also a sangha, okay? Capital S Sangha are more ordained people, monastics. But you have kind of a Sangha community like Shantideva Center and other centers you're connected to. And they're like nursemaids, nurses that help us, you know, they help administer the medicine. And they kind of say, this is how I did it, and this is what worked for me. And so it is helpful sometimes for my mind. I'll think, okay, you know, there's the doctor. I've come here to get the medicine. I need some help. I've come here to get the medicine. So one issue is, are you going to take the medicine? You listen to teachings over and over, and we don't retain a lot. We don't hear it that well. So then it's about what kind of pot are you? And the teaching on the pot is there's 3 types of pots you'd like to avoid being. One of them has the lid on too tightly. So I've shown up at teachings, and I really wasn't that interested in the teaching. But somehow somebody dragged me along, or I was like, yeah. And then the teacher started to talk on something else that didn't pertain, and I just shut down. And nothing was getting in the pot, okay? Then sometimes you show up and the pot has a hole in the bottom. So I'm not really listening well. And I show up and I hear what the teacher's saying, I'm awake, and it just goes in one ear, we say, and out the other. And I've seen many, many times people will leave a teaching with Lama Zopa Rinpoche or His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and they'll come out, and then other people that were cooking for the retreat center or something, they'll go, oh, you know, and people go, wow, that was powerful. Okay. And people say, what did His Holiness teach on? And I've seen people just, I don't know. No idea. So it just ran right out. Okay. Nothing holding it in. Then the last kind of pot is a dirty pot. And that's a pot where you come with preconceived notions. And everything the teacher's saying, you're kind of debating and criticizing and like that. So that also taints the teaching in a way. So you can think about what kind of pot do you show up sometimes. These are some of our fundamental teachings that we've had to avoid one of those faults of the pot, they say, like that. So thank you very much. I also see, welcome Claire, lovely to see you. I was just thinking about you the other day because you know what season we're in. That's my little secret with Claire. Okay. I can't believe, was that a year ago that I was in Santa Fe? Unbelievable that was a year ago. Okay, wow, that was like 2 weeks ago. Okay. So let's talk about Tantra. And what we want to talk about tonight is the foundations. And so for some people that really want to get into the nitty-gritty of Tantra tonight, that's going to happen this weekend. I'm sorry. But this is about the foundation. How do I get set up for this? And there's something that's talked about, part of what's called common preliminaries that you need to practice Dharma, and certainly to practice Tantra. Just going to bring up. The first thing I want to mention is the meaning of Tantra. The meaning of Tantra, which is a Sanskrit word, meaning of Tantra. And I'm just curious because I for a long time didn't really know what it meant. I'm just curious if you want to put your hand up for a minute. Any ideas that you know what Tantra means? And some of you have heard this teaching before. Great, Alex, terrific. There's a few of you, not so many. Alex, what would you say? Could you want to unmute? Jennifer's got her hand up, yep.
I would think maybe...
Do you want to unmute, Alex?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I would think it might mean continuity.
Can you speak a little louder into your mic?
I think that one meaning of the word Tantra would be continuity.
Continuity. Okay, great. Continuity. Let's look at that word. Thank you. Okay, continuity. Whoops. Absolutely. Tantra in Sanskrit is a word for thread. Thread, like what you sew with. Okay? Hence, continuum. So thank you, Alex, because that was correct. Continuum. A thread is a continuous thread. Sometimes when I'm talking to people about how one way of doing shine meditation, calm abiding meditation, is you're placing your mind on an object and you're following that thread, that continuum, not letting the distractions pull you. So Tantra is Sanskrit term for thread. Okay, let's take the word in pieces, which Sanskrit and Tibetan often does. Tan, the beginning, tan, is stretch or expand, to stretch or expand. Okay, tra is instrument. So Tantra is an instrument to expand your consciousness in a certain way. So to access, okay, the super mundane through the mundane. This is the practice of Tantra, and identifying the microcosm with the macrocosm. Okay, so what we're taking is, I'm taking my ordinary appearance, which we were doing just briefly in the early meditation, just to give you a taste, okay? I'm taking ordinary situations, okay, and all of it can be transformed with the right view. You know, and we want to hold the right motivation in that as well, okay? But in order to do that, there's common preliminaries that have to be followed. Common preliminaries that have to be followed. If they're not followed, you can really get into problems and create obstructions for you on your path and slow down your path. Tantric practice, they say, is the quickest path to enlightenment. And we're going to talk about that this weekend. But if you don't do it properly, you end up creating a longer path for you like that. So let's talk about the common preliminaries. This is basically a foundation of lamrim, but they divide it into something called the three principal aspects of the path. Three principal aspects of the path, sometimes called the three principles of the path. Okay, just a show of hands, who knows what the three principles of the path are? Just put your hand up. Okay, we got a few people, great. And they are? Does anybody want to unmute or put your hand up? Cynthia looks like she's mentioning them. Do you want to unmute, Cynthia? Lovely to see you, my dear.
I'll try. I think it's refuge, emptiness, bodhichitta.
Okay, she's got two of them right, but not in the right order.
Oh, okay.
First, thank you, Cynthia. That's great. What's the first one?
Renunciation.
Thank you. Renunciation. Thank you. Is that Mary? Renunciation, bodhichitta, and emptiness. Three principles of the path, or the three principal aspects of the path. Renunciation, bodhichitta, and emptiness. Okay, let's look a little bit more at these. And one thing I wanted to read, let's see, about Tantra. Oh, hang on one second. I do need to plug in the computer. That would be helpful. Okay, great. This is some of the reading that goes along. And so also Jennifer's wonderful and worked with some resources I want to point out for this weekend, and you can look at them later. You can look at them this evening or today. There's a wonderful video of Lama Yeshe teaching Introduction to Tantra. So what I believe it is there's a transcript of that teaching. There's a CD I have, Introduction to Tantra, but he also wrote a book, Introduction to Tantra. So there's some transcripts of that. I'll talk a little bit about that. And there's references from Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. There's a couple pages from that. And there's books like this that I want to point out. Okay. This is one I also like. You're familiar with this, The World of Tibetan Buddhism. Okay. There's a section in here on Tantra, and this will take you through the 3 principal aspects of the path. The World of Tibetan Buddhism. So there's a number of books. Jennifer's put them down on a resource list with the transcripts of part 1 and 2 from the Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive of Lama and Introduction to Tantra. There's some other readings that go along also with this, generally for the DB class. Thank you very much. So Jennifer's put in the chat where you can find those resources. Thank you so much. So I just want to read a little bit. And let me explain this book, one of my favorites. This is one volume of Liberation. This one's called Liberation in Our Hands. We're familiar with Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, okay? It's the same teaching that was given by Kabji Pabonka Rinpoche around 1945 in Lhasa. There is a 1-volume version of it by Wisdom Publications called Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. This is a 3-volume version called Liberation in Your Hands. All it is a different translation. It's a different translation, but it's the same teaching. And what happened is the teaching was then recorded and kind of synthesized by His Holiness Trijang Rinpoche. And he was the junior tutor to His Holiness the Dalai Lama in his past life. And he's been reincarnated, and he's a layperson living in Vermont right now. His Holiness Trijang Rinpoche is a beautiful being. And so this is a book like our Bible that a lot of us use and have studied the lamrim with. And this one has 3 volumes, but it's the same as the 1-volume one. I just happen to like this translation, as I said. I want to talk a little bit how to train in the Vajrayana path. Okay. And so what it says is we have to develop an experiential realization. I'm quoting from the book. An experiential realization of renunciation by practicing the paths associated with persons of lesser and moderate capacity. They're talking about the 1st and 2nd scopes of the lamrim. And then we must do the same with the enlightenment mind. That's the mind of bodhichitta. Okay. And that's based on the practices of the path for practitioners of great capacity. So right there, they're just talking about the 3 principal aspects of the path. We need to have the foundation of the lamrim pretty clearly rooted in our minds, okay, before we take tantric empowerment, which I'll talk about a little later. After gaining some experiential realization by analytically meditating on all of those topics of the lamrim, then we must achieve a sure understanding of the correct view regarding emptiness. Okay, only then we undertake to take on the teachings of the Vajrayana of Tantra. So this, now a lot of people say, but I had tantric empowerment and I don't really have any realizations of the lamrim. So you might be nudged by your teacher to take a tantric empowerment. They may have given you instructions of a connection you have with a certain deity called a yidam in Sanskrit, meaning an aspect of the omniscient mind, and say, when you get a chance, take that empowerment. Usually those yidams are highest yoga tantra, the highest level of tantra, like that. So again, if we attempt, and I'm quoting from the book, to enter the tantric path without first having gained those 3 knowledges, those 3 scopes, okay, then our efforts will not serve as methods for achieving liberation and ultimate enlightenment. Okay, so like a small child, it says, mounted on the back of a wild horse, not only will we fail to gain any positive result, but we'll also be exposing ourselves to very great danger. On the other hand, if we enter the Mantrayana path or the Vajrayana path, it's the same. After having generated experiential realizations of the three principal elements of the path, then we're sure to benefit from the quality of swiftness that's inherent in the tantric path. Okay, and the Vajrayana teachings, tantric teachings, are said to be even more rare, okay, than a Buddha. We haven't really seen a live Buddha, most of us, okay? We have a historical Buddha, fortunately, in our world system, in our age. I mean, 2,600 years ago is still our world system, and a Buddha manifested. There can be many Buddhas actually walking around, but so the secret teachings of Tantra are even rarer than that, to have somebody like that. And so what's interesting is they talk about, some of you have heard about Maitreya, the next Buddha, they say will manifest. Maitreya represents loving kindness, and he'll manifest. The interesting thing and the difference between Maitreya Buddha and Shakyamuni Buddha, Maitreya Buddha does not teach Tantra. So right now in the rebirth that you got, having met Buddha's teachings, having met the Dharma, you have every perfect opportunity, and you've heard me say that many times again, every perfect opportunity to practice, to lay the foundation out and to get tantric empowerment. So right now and let me see, I'll just go on a little bit. Okay, it says here, now it is wrong for us to request the ritual that grants permission to recite the mantras of these high deities. Rather, we must approach a qualified Vajra master and ask them for initiation, the proper initiation. So there's certain ways to do it. Then you want to keep all your vows and pledges that are taken during an initiation, and they say protecting them like you would your very own eyes, like that. And through proceeding that way, enlightenment is guaranteed. Enlightenment is guaranteed. That's how the vows are set up. We're going to talk about more about that this week, but I just wanted to give an introduction. So what happens is you might not have thorough realizations of the lamrim, okay? And right now we're in COVID, so it's a very unique circumstance where you can't get in person with someone to take an empowerment. It could have been that just this past month, August to September, Lama Zopa Rinpoche would have been leading a 1-month retreat in North Carolina. Some of us may have been there. And occasionally there might be an initiation that happens at the end. Coming up would be the Kopan November course next month. That would be starting next month. And Rinpoche tends to, near the end, could be some tantric empowerments, or there might be an opportunity. The other thing that's helpful, if you stay close to a center, if you maybe are volunteering for a center and you're maybe working with the spiritual program team, so you're helping set up programs and you're involved in things like that, when the centers start opening again, which I hope they do at some point, okay, it might also be lovely that they continue with online teachings because there seems to be quite a forum for that. But when the centers start to open, they'll start hopefully inviting some of our precious teachers to come and some of the highly realized beings like Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So if you're part of that group and you're closer in with the center, you might then think of an initiation that you specifically want, or a few people at the center have been trying to get, and then you can make that request and set that up with the program and write that specifically in the letter that you write to request the teacher to come. That's how a lot of these initiations have happened in the West. And if you're able to travel sometimes to India or Nepal to see a certain teacher, to be where they live or something, there could be a lot more initiations given if that's what you're interested in. I think a symptom right now of the degenerate times is that these initiations are getting rarer and harder to come by. So again, if we participate properly, if we think about what's going to move our minds, the 3 principles of the path, how to get proper initiation, keeping vows, I think that will only benefit your path right now in these challenging times. Okay, so let's look a little bit more at the 3 principles. Okay. Okay. And I want to mention some terms, and this is more of some of the things from Alex Berzin, John Landau, talk about renunciation as definite emergence, are terms they've used, definite emergence. And so when you think of that, your renunciation, you're emerging, you're coming out of the swamp like the lotus that comes out of the swamp, untainted. So you need to kind of emerge from that. And they talk about renunciation, bodhichitta, and emptiness as, and this is in sometimes in Lama Yeshe's introduction to Tantra as well, emerging, that's renunciation. Bodhichitta, opening, you're opening your heart. Okay, emptiness, you're dissolving. You're dissolving every ordinary view that you're having. Everything that appears concretely to you as inherently existent, I'm dissolving that view of it and asking myself, checking over and over, poking at it, that things do not exist in that concrete way from their own side. Again, emerging, opening, and dissolving. So what I'd ask you to do as part of these common preliminaries in general is through your daily life right now, you can start working on this in addition, if you can, to a more formal meditation practice. But I was just reading this other transcript related to something else from Rinpoche about the spiritual teacher. And Rinpoche is saying that, you know, there's more formal meditation you do, and then can be informal of how in your everyday life you're interacting from morning to night is what we ultimately want to be doing in Tantra. You know, I'm not kind of, I walked into the church, so now I'm going to be holy and think of everything as wonderful. What happens, and I've mentioned this before, when you're in the grocery store, when you're driving your car, when you're walking down the street like that, am I not kind of seeing the grace in everything? Am I not thinking about, so renunciation, to just take that for one thing, how can I work with that in daily life? Renunciation, a lot of people now are shopping online, but occasionally we go to a store. A lot of people I know have been cleaning out and paring down, which I think has been one really beneficial thing of this quarantine and this kind of pause button getting pushed with COVID. But just think about when something in your mind tells you, I want that, you know. So first of all, look at that mind of desire. Look at how it's grabbed you. And did you realize that in the morning when you woke up, were you aware of that thing that you needed? Or was it that when you came in contact with an object, or perhaps came in contact with the person, suddenly that tipped it off, that triggered something, okay? So I like to always, if I'm in a store where an object is triggering desire in my mind, okay? This is, the Dharmic path is all about observing your mind. Observing your mind as much as you can throughout every moment of the day, okay? Now we get tired, so give yourself breaks a little bit, but eventually you want the mind to catch up where it doesn't need breaks. Okay, where you are in the glorious spaciousness of a divine reality. You divine in the center of it. Okay, that's what we're doing finally with Tantra. But don't practice that until you've had the proper initiation, okay? So once again, you're in the store and something triggers you. Can I just watch that, observe? I'm being triggered in my mind. There's, I see desire rise. And so I immediately now have this reaction that, oh, in the morning, I didn't even know about that thing. So why now? Like, and then I have a little debate with myself right there really quickly. Is that the thing, you know, there are certain items in your house you might need. There was something lately, like a toilet brush. I needed to replace, the other one broke, okay? Something like that. But so then I quickly equate, oh, that is the thing. That's right, I would have forgotten that. I do need that. Or versus, no, it's just an extra thing. It's just all shiny and wonderful, and that's why it's attracting me. Okay, so renunciation begins there. It begins there, I'll say. But here's real renunciation on one level, and then we'll go to the real, when you have a realization, experiential realization of it. But it gets to a deeper level when you start having compassion for yourself. That's another layer, I'd say, of renunciation. When you're having compassion for yourself, okay? Because eventually what happens is you get tired, first of all the junk, all that stuff of going to the store and I bought that and I bought that and I bought that. Now I'm struggling financially a little bit. I overspent. And again, you know, how many pairs of those boots do you need? Just because they were on sale, just because the fleece vests were on sale, you already have one. You already have one in that color. Do you really need another color of it? Isn't the one you have good enough? And so each thing where you get tired enough, but here's another thing is your behavioral patterns. Your behavioral patterns. You keep creating suffering for yourself. You keep creating suffering for yourself. How does that happen? Because I suffer from delusion. I get confused about things. And because of my confusion, I generate hatred or distaste from some or person or thing, or the desire again for this thing. I need to have this thing, okay? Okay, and my mind ends up in duality, unbalance, constantly averting from this and drawing to that. I need this, I don't want that. And so there's no peace in the mind every moment. And we just look at, it's interesting right now with the contentious situation of our country, the United States, going on. So there's been a few times I kind of felt a little tossed and a little down about what was happening. And then I went, well, wait a minute, you know, I just need to keep going. I just need to keep doing what I'm doing, practicing, teaching, working for some positive organizations. You know, I volunteer for some groups, and what else can you do? What else can you do? I can get enlightened. I'm trying to get enlightened. You know, I have a long, long way to go, but that's really all I can do. So why should I get disturbed about what's going on? You know, sometimes stuff is alarming and disturbing. And then I, once again, have a look at it and say, okay, so that's some karmic manifestation. If I don't like it, some negative seed ripening in my mind, some negative seed ripening in my mind right now. And I might say, wow, that's a really big negative seed. Okay. So when you get tired enough of those negative seeds, right, you start saying enough. I don't want those anymore. I'm tired of that. Okay. That's the beginning of that seed of renunciation in you. Compassion for yourself, for your own suffering. I can't keep suffering like that. You know, how many of you, and this was something I remembered, a turning point early in my Dharma career. We've all been there with certain things. For some of you, it might be a job. I don't know how many of you, anybody here really kind of done with their job? You know, it's not going well. And the other thing is with COVID, there's some people so grateful to have a job right now. So grateful. And if you can work at home with your job, good for you. Like you're way ahead of the gang, okay? Fantastic. But sometimes we've had a job, we've had a boss, it's unhealthy, okay? Sometimes we've had a relationship, unhealthy. But you kind of go along. Right now there's somebody I know who's in a relationship, and it's not a serious relationship that's going to go to marriage, which is ultimately what they'd like with someone. Not exactly right now, but they'd like to be moving in that way with someone. And it's probably not this person. But they've actually said to me, but in COVID, it can be kind of lonely. So they're kind of settling and hanging out together, right? But what happens is you're making mistakes maybe in the relationship. And you keep kind of making mistakes and falling flat on your face. And I remember waking up at one point in this relationship. I just kept doing the same pattern over that caused me suffering and caused somebody else suffering. And it kind of escalated into this big fight that we had, me and the other person. And then they kind of stormed out of the flat. And I was really kind of alarmed that, you know, and I remember running to the window thinking like they didn't really leave, but I saw their car driving away. Like they really left, like at least that scene. And it really alarmed me so much that I had to kind of like step back and evaluate, how am I doing? I can't keep doing it like this. And I remember having this very firm determination in my mind. I can't do this anymore. Can't do it like this anymore. So a seed of renunciation, you're emerging out of the gunk and saying, I can't do this anymore. So you can bring it into everyday life. What is my suffering like right now? Now, I know a lot of people when I come on to teach and ask people how they're doing, And if you have internet and you're sitting in a comfortable room in front of your nice computer, whatever, most people go to me, you know, they're doing really well. Okay, that's a little danger spot. Now, I'm glad you're doing well, actually, but you don't want to get into the complacency, the comfort of the complacency, where I am really just focused on this current life right now and making it as comfortable as possible. That's a dangerous place for a spiritual practitioner, especially on this path. Okay, and especially if you're going to be a disciple of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. But most of the ancient teachings you'll read, the ancient masters, and what's interesting is one of my COVID projects, some of you have heard about, is I've been involved in a massive scanning project of 30 some years of Dharma notes in notebooks. I couldn't move one more time with these notebooks. I'm not using the notebooks. I haven't been, you know, so my dear brother scanned most of the materials in after I organized it and had to rip out all the things of the notebooks. And now I've categorized all the different sections, and I'm still not finished with the project, but I'm put it in my computer so I can use it for teachings. So I'm actually using it. And over and over and over, this must have impressed me. I keep finding these notes: give up this life in your mind. Give up this life in your mind. From Lama Zopa Rinpoche, from different teachers, different books I've read, is that the real spiritual practitioners are interested in their future lives. They're setting themselves up for where they're going to go in future lives. We've got it set in this life. We're set. You know, I just look at the screen. We've met the Dharma is what I mean. You have met a qualified spiritual path that will get you enlightened. That means it will get you free of all your suffering permanently, free of any fear, omniscient mind, and a heart fully opened, just moving every moment, motivated every moment to benefit all living beings. You're there, you've made it. Now, you're not enlightened yet, perhaps, okay? But you are on that path. You don't need to worry about this life right now, except to participate in it. And if you want to make more strides on the spiritual path, you need to participate in that and make it happen. It needs effort. We make effort in other directions. Why not in the spiritual path? Okay, so this life, so the more you think about my comfort in this life and setting this up and making sure that I have these things I need, keeps us away from true renunciation. And then true renunciation is layered upon those other things I just mentioned, is when you have a realization of renunciation, is when you strive day and night to get out of samsara. That's a definition of true renunciation, when you strive day and night to get out of samsara. So I know that for a lot of people, that's really hard. And you'll say, like, I can't practice Dharma all the time, or I'm not a monk, I'm not a nun. And I know great lay practitioners that are going for it, you know. So it doesn't mean you need to be a monastic and you need to be living at a center and, you know, but it's just keep thinking of how you can baby steps again. Okay, the lamrim is steps on the path, stages of the path. So can I make some small adjustments in life to get a little bit more on the cushion, to read that Dharma book I wanted to read, to take that course I wanted to do, to maybe lengthen my meditation a little bit more and really make some effort. When you start making some really deep effort, the results start to come. You start to see more of the results. What happens, I find, for a lot of us is we're dabbling and we're getting to it a little bit. But, you know, I want my glass of wine and then I'm going to do this and I'm meeting these friends for dinner and I just want to watch that show on Netflix and I want to kick back and read the novel and like that. And so, and it's not that there's anything wrong with that. It's your choice. But it's, again, when the suffering rears its head, and it will, and it does in small ways and in larger ways, what's my response? How am I addressing it? What's the breath of life I have to deal with it? Like that. Does that make sense? So just thinking, and again, with yourself, sometimes the volume, I've been at stages in my life, even as a lay practitioner, when I felt like I needed to turn up the volume a little bit, meaning on my spiritual practice. Something needed to shift. like that. And I felt like it kept an edge. And a lot of the spiritual practice is leaning into the edge, leaning in. I think Pema Chodron says leaning into the sharp places. The sharp places, that's when we transform, if we're willing to do that. And I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy like that. Okay, we've got quite a little party going on next door. I can hear it. Okay. Okay, so, and renunciation brings to mind this image, voluntarily giving up, doing without. I mean, it's not about giving all the money away. It's again, renouncing pleasure, renouncing that comfort, looking at that, by understanding how you suffer, by understanding how your suffering gets activated, how it molts, how it changes like that. I think it's really, really important. A lot of us know blatant suffering, but then but we don't know the more subtle sufferings, the suffering of change we get hooked in. The suffering of change we interpret a lot of times for pleasure, like that. So that has to be kind of dealt with, of understanding a situation changes. A lot of people resist change and don't want the change, even though the change may be better. But again, layering pleasure on that when it's simply the space between one piece of suffering. I'm sitting on the bench and the sun felt really warm and now it's too hot. Okay, I make a change from that moment, it's too hot, suffering, okay? And I go onto the shady side of the bench and I interpret that as, oh, relief. This feels so good, okay? There is that momentary change. It's not ultimate happiness, not going to bring about, but suddenly after a while on the shady side of the bench, it becomes too cold. And we're constantly going through the suffering of change every moment. You're really hungry, you want to eat, then you eat this food, then you eat too much of it, you get indigestion, people changing jobs, and COVID is changing, just as a virus. I'm amazed. It seemed like every 2 weeks there's a new molting. It started as a cough, then it was an upper respiratory thing. Okay, then people got toe infections and skin infections, and it changed in children. And now people, these long haulers, they call them, as you know, people that have COVID for so long are having heart issues and kidney issues and other organ issues like that. And they said that there's different strains of it now. So it's not manifesting as it used to be. There's just changing nature of things, okay? So, okay. Developing the opening, the compassionate heart, I think we're familiar with. And also the teachings on renunciation take you right through the first two scopes. All those teachings on the advantageousness of being a human, so we have this buoyancy of this incredible life, but it's gonna pass away quickly. And when it does, things could be much worse. And what prevents them from being worse is I need to take refuge. I need to have some sort of support. And once I have that support and have entered into the teachings, I then need to know how to conduct myself. So that's all the lower scope. And then I get into this and I realize, but I'm still suffering the way I am. So let me look at suffering. What's so bad about suffering? How am I suffering? And I begin to start to generate a wish for others to be free of suffering, okay? But it's first layered in my own suffering. And then I start thinking in this middle scope is you explore all the different ways you suffer. Okay, and that also starts helping the heart open. But that really helps me generate the renunciation. I'm tired of suffering. I'm done. Okay, but as the heart keeps coming open, I come to bodhichitta. Bodhichitta, the second of the three principal aspects of the path. Okay, it's not enough for me to be free of the suffering if all these other people are suffering. So if I could really generate the right view, emptiness, the third principle of the path, right? And if I could have that open, compassionate heart that I developed from renouncing my own suffering, then I could get enlightened. And from that space, I could really benefit all living beings. Okay, so let me little bit more here. Okay. I want to bring in a little bit here, and we're going to talk a little bit more tomorrow. So, and this is a little bit from Lama Yeshe, and another book I really like. This book does have a thing on it that you're not supposed to see it. Tantric Path of Purification. This is based on the Haruka Vajrasattva practice that they've also made, I believe, into a CD. And it is supposed to be for Tantric initiates, but there's parts of this that you can have a look at. And partly what Lama's talking about in the book is how we intellectualize too much as Westerners, how we intellectualize, how we hallucinate as Westerners, okay, that creates problems with us realizing these three principal aspects of the path. But another thing is what drama kings and queens we are at times, like what we're imputing on our friends, on our reality, on our neighbors, and what we're projecting on everything out there. And right now, there's a lot of projections, as you know, on certain politicians. And it's creating a lot of grief for some people. And I've certainly had my ups and downs of things and realized at one point my mind didn't feel very peaceful. And so I realized I had to start using my mind differently. I had to start thinking differently about it. So instead of taking such a concrete external reality, there's another way to see it that can help you generate loving kindness in your heart towards all these beings, okay? And also help me correct my view a little bit like that. Not that I've had a direct perception of emptiness, but trying to use emptiness to see them. And so recently I led a meditation for my sister, and she's not a Buddhist, but she likes to meditate with me. We try to do it every week. We both got a little bit too busy and we haven't done it in a couple weeks, but one of the last meditations I led for her, because we were talking about politics and she was all kind of upset about something. And so we did a meditation using one person in particular who's triggered a lot of people right now. And this is somebody a lot of people I know have been identifying as this great evil person. And I was really looking at them and explaining how, it's interesting. Some people like this person and some people don't like this person. So is it the person? Because if they were inherently bad, and we use all these labels, right? Inherently stupid and idiotic and mentally unbalanced and whatever you want to say, if they were like that concretely, and inherent existence means you're kind of frozen in time and space, as some of you know that, meaning they're always like that. And if they're always like that, everyone would see them that way. But look at our planet, look at our country. Not everybody agrees on which politicians are good and which are bad. Some think these are bad, some think these are bad. So it starts deflecting that concrete hold, which is from your side, from your mind. It's not from them, it's from your mind projecting that onto them, okay? They don't become unpeaceful because you're thinking that about them. They don't even know you're thinking that about them. Your mind becomes very unsettled, unpeaceful. So this is the work we have to do. And then the second part of the meditation I did with her was considering how they suffer, considering how politicians suffer. Some people say, well, President Trump got sick recently, a week ago, and then he got the best medical care. And I wish I could have medical care like that. Okay, so he doesn't have to suffer as much. Okay, so again, and people get angry because of that. Okay, but think of the suffering. So having had, and in some ways I'll say the good fortune on one level, to work in politics at one point in Washington, D.C. with politicians, and sometimes in electoral politics, which is the worst part of it, where you're running for elections and you're working on campaigns. And the only reason I say good fortune is I could see the tremendous suffering of doing that, of that process. And I remember that one of the men I worked for, this congressman who was so decent, such a good guy. This is the old days when there were some people that were really trying to work together from different views. he was such a decent person, and he was a minister, actually. So Methodist minister. Is when I saw how grueling it was for him running for a Senate seat, a US Senate seat, how grueling. And I remember somebody years ago, when I got into the Dharma and they heard I was in politics and we were talking about some issues, and it was a nun, an American nun, and she said to me, she's a dear friend of mine now, and she said, why don't you run for office? Did you ever think of running? And I thought, never in my life would I do, like when you talk about compassion, but I could see what it does to these politicians, these people that do it. So people say, well, they have big egos. Well, you know what, you do need to have a bit of an ego to run. They definitely, you know, I've seen in the Senate, there's 100 of them. So they feel very special, these people in the Senate, for the most part. However, it's grueling to run for office. So when I think about that for politicians, and I think how they can never make everybody happy. So I went through this meditation with her, trying to pinpoint a few people that she was really holding as other, and kind of went through it. And I said, think about their lives, think about, and I just think if you take somebody who might be labeled as a clinical kind of narcissist, okay, and you put them in a public office, and anyone in public office, people are pointing fingers at you. People are always going to be trying to take you down and criticize you, and not everyone will agree with you. And the last part is you're never going to be able to make everybody happy like that. So when you think of somebody in that role, and then they might have a situation of being more narcissistic and things, I think it's a disaster to wake up to that every day. So anyway, I was going through some things like that. It's a way we can work with our minds, with bodhichitta and emptiness, these two aspects of the path, to take on these external things. If you think about it too much, or you're watching this program or this news program, and the mind becomes not peaceful, or it could be somebody you're working with, a colleague you don't like, your boss, it could be a neighbor that makes you crazy, it could be your partner, somebody living in your household. They're always going to be showing up as long as my mind still suffers and has obscuration of delusion. Somebody will show up like that. So I need to start working with it, to look at them and to continue opening the heart, to keep my heart open. That's what makes your mind more peaceful. Consider them from different angles, okay? So, and then slowly, and it was really interesting because when these little short meditations I lead for my sister, I never know how they resonate. She always really likes it, but I never expected. And later, and the whole week, she kept sending me these little messages saying, I'm really thinking about him differently now. Like I'm really seeing, and she was much more peaceful. So just her small effort like that, and it wasn't any great thing from my side of leading the meditation, but we can all do that. We have to consider to continue to choose kindness as a response. Now, sometimes we get knocked flat and we forget for a moment and we get irritated and something happens and you're not having a good day. That's okay. You're a human being. That's okay. You are a human being. Give yourself a break, okay? And just as far as on this path of the three principles of the path, I want to interject once again a self-compassion break that we really need right now on what's going on with the planet. This is from Kristen Neff. I've mentioned this in some of the other courses I taught, but when you notice not having a good day and I'm not finding the bodhicitta motivation happening, or even being able to get into that meditation, to consider the suffering of the other person, considering what they go through every day, what they wake up for. And I'll tell you, as I was working for a congressperson, not a senator, a representative, this is like a different level, a lesser level in a sense. I don't mean to sound like one's better than the other, but they have a smaller district to take care of is what I meant, not the state as a senator is going to have bigger responsibility. They have a smaller district. And when I could see his schedule every day of what he had to deal with every single day, there was like a day off a week sometimes. Maybe he got 2 days once in a while, but often we were, calling him Saturday morning. We need to go over this. We need to do this report. We need to tell you about this going on. it's grueling. It's not a pleasant kind of thing. And you say, well, they get paid for it and they have great health insurance. Yeah, they do have those things. They're supposed to serve us, but it's not all that pleasant sometimes, like that, with the pressure on them and the criticism and the issues with their staffs and stuff like that. And the re-elections, if you're a representative, it's every 2 years. So you're basically always running, always have to be dealing with raising money, talking to donors, and it's grueling. That's why I'm a nun now, okay? Much happier. So self-compassion break. Just for a moment, it's not going well for you. There's 3 steps in this that I really like, 3 steps. The beginning is mindfulness. Can you just interject for a moment, well, I'm not having a good day. Not having a good day. Or here comes the person that's challenging for me right now. I'm just observing. I don't have to do anything about it. Just for a moment, I'm just observing. Here it is. Okay, and I'm going to be very careful right now because this is when I could open my mouth. This is when I could get into it. And for a minute, maybe I want to go back to seeing the glory of everything, the divinity and everything. The meditation we did early on, okay? Step number 2, for a moment. You're experiencing this in relation to this person, or you're feeling anxious because of whatever's going on right now with COVID and the quarantine, and now you're worried about the winter, and for people in cold climates, might not be able to go outside as much and going to be locked in this house with all these people, or being alone, and it's going to get colder and maybe the virus is going to spread, and whatever your thing is. Or are you going to keep your job? Are you going to be okay financially? All those things going on, okay? Step number 2 is shared humanity. Can you think that so many people on this planet are going through this? This is one time this virus has affected everybody, okay? I'm actually amazed right now why it doesn't seem to be rapidly spreading in Africa. Have you found that interesting? And I don't know whether it's just that they're not reporting, they don't have enough ways to report it and stuff other than South Africa, but I thought it was going to devastate Africa, and it really hasn't made a massive move there in Africa, which is really impressive to some degree. Okay, so shared humanity, there's many other people going through this as well, and many of them are going through it worse than we are. So that's a way I can kind of think. And then the third thing is loving kindness. This tips into the bodhichitta. Again, keeping that open heart, but towards myself. I might need to even put my hand here on my heart. In this moment of depression or anxiety or not liking where my mind is going, and just thinking, taking a deep breath and think, what do I need right now to give myself that's kind? Or what kind thing can I do for myself right now? 3 steps: mindfulness, shared humanity, loving kindness. Can you consider that? Okay. I want to talk a little bit and then I'll take some questions in a moment. One thing I wanted to add in, I'm going to talk a little bit more this weekend, a practice called Lama Chopa, okay? Also called Guru Puja. Guru Puja in Sanskrit, Lama Chopa in Tibetan. This is a practice that is often done on the 10th and 25th of the Tibetan calendar. It is a highest yoga tantra practice. It can be done that way. It's a practice that you can incorporate all your other practices into with highest yoga tantra. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche really likes this practice. It's recommended that we do it at the centers on those days, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the significance of this, of what I can say about it, and how significant this is and how it relates to Tantra right now, okay? So normally Rinpoche likes to do the first session of the day in group retreats as this practice, and a lot of it is chanted in the Tibetan. It's quite beautiful when it's chanted well, and in our books we have the translation as well, so you can read the different verses. Over time, I've done it a lot in my retreats, so over time your mind starts getting soaked in the different verses. what it actually is an elaborate 7-limb prayer. So part of our, and this is a practice we're going to do this weekend, is we're going to do the Shakyamuni Buddha practice, which in a sense is like a deity practice to get us used to that, which is what we do in Tantra. And we're going to do it with some preliminaries like the 7-limb prayer to get us used to how we set up an active, lively, vibrant practice that's effective for our minds. So it is an elaborate 7-limb prayer. And the significance is it's set up in a certain way from ancient teachers in a way that was most effective for the mind to help us gain realizations and receive the blessings from Buddhas, bodhisattvas that help us to attain more realizations. This is the whole purpose. And right now it's all contained in this one prayer. So to go on a little bit more about the reason we do this Guru Puja, this Lama Chopa, and it's funny with Lama Chopa, Lama is Tibetan for guru. Guru in Sanskrit is teacher or spiritual virtuous friend. Like that. So it signifies a teacher. And years ago, I was at the San Francisco Center, and we had the Lama Chopa scheduled on the calendar. And newer students, somebody new came, and it was fine. They can do the practice along, and there's certain parts of it they may not understand. There's certain substances that are often given out during it that they don't need to partake of. And they'll learn that when they have tantric initiation. And so they came, and it was very cute. And they said, well, where's Lama Chopa? Like, is the Lama here? We heard Lama Chopa was going to be here. And so that often has happened at centers so it just means this ceremony that we normally do. And the reason we do it is from the 4 classes of Tantra, Kriya, we're going to talk about more of this, Kriya Tantra, Charya Tantra, Anuttara Tantra, and Maha Anuttara, okay? And so those are the 4 classes of Tantra I'm going to explain this weekend. And this is the root of the path to enlightenment, Guru Puja. This is the root of the path. So correctly following the virtuous friend with thought and action, in a sense, is this route to enlightenment. And so this practice combines all of that together. Without the practice of correctly following the virtuous friend with thought and action, the root of the path isn't there. There's no actualizing the path to enlightenment. There's no enlightenment at that point. So you have to have this understanding clearly in your brain that's a basis for the 3 principles of the path, okay? And so there's many different levels of practicing this Guru Yoga. And the Guru Puja, this Lama Chopa, is one of the highest ways you can practice it. So it's really brilliant. It was written by Panchen Losang Choki Gyaltsen. And he was in the lineage of the Panchen Lamas. So the Panchen Lamas, to give you some orientation, there was the Dalai Lama in Lhasa, and the Panchen Lama's seat was in a town outside of Lhasa, a town that's still there. Now it's a city called Shigatse. And that was where he lived. And there was a Panchen Lama that lived at the time of His Holiness the Dalai Lama that were both in Tibet when the communist Chinese invaded in the 50s. They were around the same age as well. And he lived in Shigatse. And so the Dalai Lama was able to exile, and he was the one that stayed behind. And stayed behind, I think, to be there for the Tibetan people. And I'm sure they had it all kind of sorted in some more highly realized way. What happened is the Chinese took him, he was the leader at the time, in a sense, in Tibet, and they basically tried to indoctrinate him, and were hoping that he would see it their way and that he would then come out and try to lead the people according to what the Chinese wanted. So they couldn't break him. And after they took him for a few years and tried to indoctrinate, they finally thought he was okay to come out and lead a rally. And they brought him out, and he got up, and immediately one of the first things he said was, "Long live the Dalai Lama." So they took him away for many more years. He was a monk as well. They forced him to marry. He lived in Beijing, and at around the age of 49, he died. And they said it was a heart attack, but the Tibetans feel that he was poisoned or killed by the communist Chinese because they could never change him. He had traveled before that time. He had gone to Australia under their direction, and apparently had some clandestine calls to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I've heard and read some stories like that. I can't attest to how true it is, but he had said that he had never, really gone over to their way, and he was still with His Holiness, and I really believe that. So he died and was reincarnated, this Panchen Lama, and that was the child that was disappeared about, I think 10 or 15 years ago with his family, and he's never been seen alive. So the Chinese named their own Panchen Lama to kind of be their ceremonial head for the Tibetans. And apparently it's a child of a government official, Tibetan. And apparently I've heard he studied well and things like that, but the Tibetans don't recognize him. So this Guru Puja was written by a previous in the lineage. I think he was the fourth of the lineage of the Panchen Lamas, like that. The incarnation of Gelwa and Sapa, who's one of the ancient teachers you hear about, who achieved enlightenment in one brief lifetime, like that, similar to Milarepa. And Kyabji Song Rinpoche, who is a contemporary Lama that is a teacher for many of us, used to say that Gelwa and Sapa achieved enlightenment very easily without needing to undergo the hardship Milarepa went through, and mainly due to the particular quality of Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. So it does tell us something about our patron saint, Lama Tsongkhapa, who lived from 1347 to 1419. The quality of those teachings, which we are often studying his lamrims, the lamrim Chenmo, the middle length lamrim, and things like that, of the nature of that, of how significant it is and how fortunate we are to be studying that. So before this Panchen Choki Gyaltsen composed the Guru Puja, the Lama Chopa, he checked with the Buddhist teachings along with previous Guru Yogas from many Indian Pandits. All of these of these lineage, Saraha and Tilopa, Naropa, like that, who achieved enlightenment in one brief lifetime, okay? He checked with many of these Guru Yogas composed by these Tibetan and different Tibetan Lamas like that, from all the different lineages, and then integrated the best of these practices into this extensive Guru Yoga practice called Lama Chopa. So that's why it's so significant, and that's something that when you get to that point where you want to practice that, or if you come to the Light of the Path retreat in North Carolina, which hopefully maybe next year, if they can reschedule and the virus is, if it's safe enough to go. But Rinpoche tends to start off the day with that. And for newer students, it's very boring and they're like, what are we doing? And I don't understand. But that's just to give you a little preemptor on why it's so significant. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that also more this weekend. I just wanted to check so far if there are any questions so far. And anything else about Tantra that you're burning to know right now. Okay, I will continue.
Hey, Amy, this is David.
Yes.
I've got a question, and I think you've mentioned some common mistakes people can make, which is basically the inverse of relying on the three aspects. So basically, if I don't properly renunciate, generate bodhichitta, and have a sense of emptiness, then I might get in trouble. But could you maybe speak to any other, common mistakes or ways people might approach this, in a way that causes more suffering than necessary? Like for example, for my part, I tend to be very enthusiastic and, maybe I might try too hard, that could be a thing. But I'm just wondering from your perspective, if you see something that causes unnecessary difficulty for students.
Sure. I'm also noticing, is that Steve in New Mexico? Hi, Steve. Great.
Hi, Venerable.
Yes, thank you, David. Yeah, what I would say is we're just trying to set up a good foundation with these three principles of learning the different topics of the lamrim in a balanced way. And I'd also say if you get into trouble with guru devotion, that can totally mess you up. So this isn't, again, about being, this isn't about being scared about the path. This is a path that unfolds and opens into incredible glory for you. But we just want to take steps along the way and not get ahead of ourselves and not overwhelm ourselves too. But the thing is, that's also part of the path. I was just discussing with Maureen last week, or earlier this week, about when we get bored with some of the practice, that's part of the practice. When we get overwhelmed with the practice, when we push too hard, that's part of it. You know, when we kind of go, I don't really feel like doing that today with the practice, that's all part of how we want to do it. But the main thing is to find a qualified teacher. And with Tantra, that's going to be essential that you need to find a tantric master. It can be male or female. I'm just using master as a term of a high guide like that, but it could be male or female. The main thing is you want to find a qualified person. They talk about the qualities of a Mahayana guru. There's 10 qualities. The Vajrayana or the Vajra guru, also there's other qualities. They need to have a highly realized mind. Will you know that about them? No, but through thoroughly checking them, you can get a sense of what type of realization. So you don't jump at someone. You want to first look at their disciples. What are the disciples like? Does the teacher walk the talk? Or have you noticed them doing other things that you don't really agree with? If you see them doing other things, check it out. Find out, check with other students. How come you saw them doing this? What's that about? Maybe that person doesn't really work for you as a teacher. You want to make sure there's somebody with really, really good ethics and they've got a somewhat subdued mind. They might have a really good intellectual understanding of emptiness, if not a direct perception. So that teacher is a really pivotal person on the path. And a Vajra guru is going to have high levels of realization because they're going to be able to give you the initiation or the empowerment. So having a very respectful attitude, and in these teachings, in these lamrim teachings, the preemptor of the three principles is guru devotion. So get familiar with the parts about guru devotion so that you can enter that part first, like taking the time to find the teacher. The Dalai Lama says to take 6 years and be a spy on your guru before you take them as a teacher. Now, some people might feel they don't have the time for that, but it's worthwhile. For some people like me, I met a teacher before I was even looking for a teacher consciously. And when I met them, I didn't really think of them as a guru at first. You know, I got a little piece of advice from them and I followed it and liked the result. I asked another little piece of advice and followed it. So it's good to check and ask some advice, which is devoting in thought. Developing faith by asking their advice. So be skillful about what you're asking. Ask something very related to your practice that's necessary, or a major life decision you've been kind of scattered about. But you need to be able to put into practice the advice once you've asked for the advice. And then check the result. What do you think about the result? So that guru devotion is very important. And then sticking with one tradition in the beginning, I think is helpful than going to a lot of different teachings in different lineages. Because the emptiness view in the Kagyu tradition from the Gelugpa tradition, the tradition I'm mostly learning in and teaching from, is slightly different. So you don't want to get mixed up until you have a firmer understanding. So Steve, those are a couple of, David, a couple of areas I'd say to be cautious. And one last thing I'd mention is also not jumping at a tantric initiation, because there's certain messages. You've come in and suddenly everybody's like, you need to be in here. It used to be in these days, like, you know, you should come. There was a woman I know, these are like the old days, but she was in Manhattan, New York City. And there was a teacher, an incredible teacher called Kalu Rinpoche, just beautiful. He's reincarnated now, and he was just a beautiful teacher. I think this was in the 80s. And she was walking down the street and somebody was in this like ballroom of a hotel and came out in the street and just said to her, you need to be in here right now. And he was giving a Kala Chakra initiation, this major tantric initiation, just that's not often given. The Dalai Lama gives it. And she said she went in, she knew nothing. She wasn't really a Buddhist, but she sat, whatever karma she had, she ended up in there. And so you don't want to end up jumping into something unless there's really a message from the universe and you get this message that you need to be in there, and it works out. But like I went to this first tantric initiation and I was really lost. There was no English translation and I really didn't know what was going on. And the Lama was amazing and one of my teachers and things, but I was so lost and so new and, and it was kind of a waste. But okay, some imprint went in, but sometimes you come out with commitments of tantric initiations we're going to talk about tomorrow. So you want to be able to keep the commitments well. If you're taking vows, like for instance, the first level is to take refuge precepts. That's a first level of engaging in Buddhism where you're realizing Buddhism is my path. You take refuge precepts. So learn what they are and keep them, because that sets up a nice foundation for you to take the next level of vows that could be lay vows or moving into bodhisattva vows. There's many more bodhisattva vows, root vows and branch vows. Then you want to learn them. And they're very practical. Most of you are keeping those bodhisattva vows anyway, even without having them. Okay, but learn them, because if you don't learn them, you can't keep them. So you learn them and you learn the different downfalls, and that will set you up for meeting a Vajra Guru and being able to take the empowerments that you want to take. And then you have tantric vows. So tantric vows are not vows you can learn beforehand. They're secret. Okay, but you want to learn the tantric vows and then you want to keep them. And most people come out of tantric initiations, I've heard this many times, and you will come out often with commitments, a daily commitment for the rest of your life. Sometimes it's to recite a certain prayer every day for the rest of your life, but better than just reciting, it would be nice to really visualize, like kind of meditate through it. More powerful for your mind, okay? So if you're taking this tantric empowerment, people come out and they go, oh, what's a commitment? I had to recite 7, they'll say 7 mantras. That's a commitment, or 1 mala of mantra, okay, on your rosary, like that. They'll go 1. But the commitment was also all the tantric vows, and usually it comes along with bodhisattva vows. You renew bodhisattva vows, but people forget the vows, and the vows are designed. People think of vows and they go, well, I don't like that because it tells me I can't do things. Okay, so what vows do is it restrains you. What does it restrain you from? Negative behavior. What kind of negative behavior? Behavior that will keep you suffering. It will keep you in the murky swamp, again, without renunciation. So the more vows you have technically on this path that you keep well, the freer you get. That's how they're designed. But in our culture, we often think of vows as, I can't, burden. I can't do this, I can't do that, and all these different things. And I think of my ordination vows, and I think I'm so free from, I see what goes on in my neighborhood, the families, and, and they have their companion and they have their kids and stuff, but often, they're outside and my kids are driving me crazy, they say, and I have to do this, and then you got to get the birthday parties ready, and then you need to do something for Valentine's Day, and now they have, and I'm free of all that. Free of that. I'm free of my shampoo and conditioner, as the high school class yesterday noticed. I said, I don't need to worry about that. I'm free. So there are certain things that I manage the vows and take them in the right way with the right attitude, really with this bigger motivation that I'm trying to do it to fully wake up so I can benefit all living beings, then the vows are a joy. And then I'm happier to keep them and see them as a way to freedom. So does that help, David?
Yeah, it does help. And, as far as the spying, I'm actually outside your window. You might not notice. Just kidding. But the vows are important. I understand. That's a great reminder. The question I've been dying to ask for most of this session that maybe you or Jennifer or someone else might address later is, how do you really find a teacher, practically speaking, that you can stay in touch with across time? Because I have recordings, readings, events I go to, but after 8 years, it's nice to maybe, you know, um, have some kind of connection to a teacher across time. So that's a question I've been trying to answer for years, but probably outside the scope of this session.
Sure. Well, one thing I direct you to is I just taught the spiritual teacher for 4 sessions to our Liverpool group in England, and I think it's on my YouTube channel. So if you go to, I'm just putting my website is there. If you go there and click on the YouTube button, it should take you there. And I haven't looked at it yet of how Anna Paula organized it. She helps me she puts those things up for me, and Facebook messages and stuff like that, announcements about the courses. So see if there's one. There should be 4 sessions on the spiritual teacher, and I discuss that pretty clearly about it. And if you want, you could contact me, and we could go over that a little bit. But basically, look at the class, because it's mainly calling from your side of, do you really want to meet this person, and how serious are you about the practice? A lot of it is karma, what you've set up in the past. So really doing some nice practice and continuing from your heart to ask for that, request that, because part of the Lama Chopa has requests in it. And that's something that we forget, is that you need to ask for certain things you want to have happen in your spiritual practice for it to happen. And really calling from the heart, in a sense. I think that's what prayer is really about. Calling from the heart, making that connection to something bigger than myself, that has higher realizations than myself, that can help give me those answers eventually as I learn to develop that in my own mind, like that. And it's different now with certain teachers. You can have teachers at different levels, right? So I might be like the alphabet teacher, and then you have somebody like Lama Zopa Rinpoche that is at a very high level of realization, and trying to get in front of them for certain teachings if you feel there's benefit, watching their videos, reading some of their books, and then showing up if they're offering a retreat or something like that when things open up again is really, and then you can slowly ask for a piece of advice, one that you can follow, then put that advice into practice really well, check the result. What do you think? So things like that.
Yeah, that's amazingly helpful. Thank you. And I'll check out those videos.
So there's a question, thank you. There's a question from what's considered formal practice? Vajrasattva practice considered formal. What I meant by formal versus more informal. Formal is when I'm sitting in my meditation space, reading prayers or doing meditation like that. That's what I meant, as opposed to when I'm going to the grocery store or driving my car, or taking a walk, or out, talking to a neighbor or something. Can we keep the mind in that yogini space like that? Do you know what I mean? Where I'm going to the grocery store, but I'm considering all the beings in the store. I'm considering many beings who are starving. And maybe I walk into the produce section, which I always find amazing in the States, and like, oh my God, all the glorious food, and there's some organics, and look at the strawberries, and I can make an offering. And I can offer to all the beings starving around the planet, just as I'm walking through the produce section. You can walk through a department store in the jewelry section and offer all the jewels or anything that appeals to your mind. And you can kind of think about kindness in the store. And I can think about generating that kind heart of considering others in the aisles. If you're trying to get through with your cart and I see somebody coming, I can move to the side and think about them first. That's more what I mean by informal practice, but I'm maintaining the mindfulness as much as I can. Does that help? So Vajrasattva, if you're doing the Vajrasattva practice on your cushion or every night in a chair, and you're really doing the visualizations, reciting the mantras clearly, that's what I'd consider more of a formal practice. Sometimes informally, I do that practice when I'm having a shower. You know what I mean? Because the water's coming down on me, so I can do it, but it's not as formal. But sometimes it works pretty well. I can keep my mind pretty focused like that.
Amy, I have a question. Would you expect to be invited to take Tantra, or have your teacher say you're ready? Is it something that I always thought it was something where you just practice and you sit back and you wait to be invited because somebody realizes that you're either ready for that step or the rite of passage, or I wasn't sure.
Sure. No, normally you might have, like, let's say you get your life instructions from Rinpoche, if there, so some of you have, and it'll give you some deities that are your meditational deities. They happen to be deities. Aspects of the omniscient mind is what I mean by deity. And it's an aspect of the Buddha that you happen to have a closer connection with that will help you get enlightened more quickly. In order to do those practices, though, of those particular aspects of the Buddha, you need to have proper empowerment or initiation. So if what you can do is from your heart really think, I really want this, and if you ever meet with a qualified Lama, like particularly the one who gave you those deities, you can request getting those initiations from them. Now, they don't all give those initiations. It depends. You have to have done the retreat, a certain retreat first on the deity and the proper fire ceremony. But you can request them, please, 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 over and over. You can request, you can send letters requesting. You can request via a center that the next time this teacher comes, would you see if it's possible if we could have a tantric initiation, which is a lot for the center to host, but maybe you can sponsor it. Some people do that, you know, they make a contribution to some of the expenses. And so from your side, you want to kind of connect and get those empowerments. If it's another teacher, just make sure you check up on the teacher. Are they valid? Is it okay? From your side, occasionally you might have your teacher, you know, nudge you to take an initiation and say, you know, you should, when you finish that retreat, then get the initiation with so-and-so. I've had that from Rinpoche where he told me to take this initiation from this teacher or that teacher. So it does really come from our side that we are it comes from our side to connect with the teacher, and it comes from our side to get those initiations as well, to keep asking for them. Some of them are hard to get if they're a little bit more obscure. And I know some friends that waited, and what they can do is they might have stayed in touch with Lama Zopa Rinpoche's schedule, for instance, which is on the website. On his, you know, it's online, and now it's with COVID, it's all different. You know, Rinpoche's quarantined in Nepal, but when Rinpoche travels all the time, and I have friends that kept waiting for him to give this one initiation. They've requested it many times. Finally, it was happening in Australia, and she went and got herself there. She's like, I've got to go get that initiation. It's rare. I've got to get it. And she made every effort. The money, took time off of work, and went and got it. So sometimes you're doing something like that, which can be, you know, a little bit more effort, but it's worth it like that.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
Yeah, Venerable Amy. Yeah, I have a clarification that if you don't mind. You mentioned that we don't have to worry too much about this current life, and I can understand that and agree, and that we should worry more about the next life. But worrying about the next life doesn't mean that I have to be really mindful on this current life and living the best way possible with all the proper way. Is there anything else besides that in order to be worried about my next life?
No, I would say you're right. What you're saying is just, can we look at certain adjustments that we can make right now in this life to be investing more in the future lives? Is that possible? So I think it's more, I think it's like that. But if you just take a day in your life in general, and I'm not just saying just you, George, but all of us, if you look at a day in your life, how much time are you really mindful or spending time practicing Dharma? Think about it, just on average. You know, you got 24 hours in a day. How many hours would you say? And when you really look at it, you know, some people might say, you know, 1 to 3 hours. And it's not a big percentage that we're putting that emphasis, making those imprints for future lives. You know, there's a lot more concern about this life, wouldn't you say? In general, for most people. And it's just normal. It's just normal. It's also part of the degenerate times. It doesn't mean you abandon your life and you say, well, I'm abandoning my kids and my family. No, this is about taking responsibility for your mind, is all I'm saying. You can be an incredible lay practitioner with kids and Absolutely, no problem. But you're just much more on a lighter level with all the events of this life right now. I'm taking care of what I need to. I'm being responsible, paying your rent, paying your mortgage. You're kind to people, taking care of your business that you need to live within reason, and making sure that there's some Dharma practice happening. And if I can create a little bit more space for that on occasion, I'm taking advantage of the retreat, getting myself to that month retreat. I'm going to do this. I know people that work through their nundro, these preliminary practices, while they worked full time and had a family. You know, they made sure they got up a little bit earlier in the morning. They did some practice. They got home, did some practice, and just tried to keep it going a little bit and whittled away like that. Does that help? Is that helpful? And thank you, Jennifer, for mentioning, I am going to lead a Lama Chopa, and it's Lama Tsongkhapa Day, December 10th. I hope you can join us. I'll lead some of the chants. It's a really beautiful practice with the chants, and you'll get a little familiarity with it. Shantideva's hosting, and I think it's on their website. So, and Lama Tsongkhapa Day is really in honor of our patron saint, Lama Tsongkhapa, and I have to say his teachings, his books have really moved my mind to a degree. And it also falls on the first night of Hanukkah. And they're both light offering festivals, which I love. Both the Tibetan calendar, the Jewish calendar, are lunar calendars. And I really love that crossover, especially on my path. And so I mentioned, I think maybe I said to Jennifer, I'm going to light the first candle of the menorah on that night while we're online. And it's a really great light offering festival when you are at the monasteries in the south of India or in Nepal. Lama Tsongkhapa Day, they put the lights up a week before. They are grander for the most part than any Christmas lights I've ever seen up. It is amazing what they put up with flashing lights, and it's a standard thing that we do in the Northern Hemisphere because it's the darkest time of the year. So it makes sense. And so if you want to, at your home on that night, if you're participating, you got your computer, light a bunch of candles or put up some electric lights, and we'll all celebrate together like that. Okay, let's see. Oh, it's not on the website yet, but it will be. And I think there's a mention or a time. It might be on, I don't know if it's on my website yet, but it might be. So usually it's 7 to 9. Thank you, Jennifer. It's 7 to 9 p.m. on December 10th. So I hope you'll be able to join. So we're going to stop there. We start tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And I start actually first at 8 a.m. that Shantideva's hosting through our prayer-a-thon. I really would invite you to join at one point. Our prayer-a-thon is hosted by the IMI, the International Mahayana Institute, which is our monks and nuns organization of the FPMT. And this was Rinpoche's suggestion, is that we do the COVID practices he's been recommending for the planet as monastics together. And what I really like now is he also did it to connect us. So a lot of people are isolated at different places, and some are in monasteries and nunneries. We don't have a lot of those around the world. So I'm, for instance, living alone. But what we do is we sign up for a 24-hour period that starts like Friday night to Saturday. And my slot is 8 a.m. East Coast time. And I've signed up for 2 months, so September and October, and I'll probably go on with it in November. And then we joined the Shantideva group because I've been doing it for Shantideva since March. We've been going with these practices for a long, long time of Rinpoche's wishes. And what happens is there's usually somebody in front of me, the half an hour in front, and somebody behind me. So I get to see some different friends, monks and nuns around the world, and it's always been really sweet. So that's 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, and the links are on the Shantideva site. I think they're on my site as well. And then 10 a.m. we start with the intro to Tantra, 10 to noon, and 2 to 4, Saturday and Sunday. So I'd like to dedicate, if we can bring up, Jennifer, the dedication prayers, please. Thank you so much, Sunny, for hosting, and Jennifer and all the Shantideva people. Thank you so much. And for all of you for joining. So if you want to mute, we can just. Oh. wadi nordudan lama sangye drugyone drowa chi kyang malupa Dei sala gubarjo Janju senjo rinpoche ma ke panam ke gyurchik ke wanyam pa me pa yang gone gondu belwarsho. Due to the merits of the 3 times collected by me, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and all other sentient beings, which are totally non-existent from their own side, may I, who is also totally non-existent from my own side, achieve Guru Shakyamuni Buddha's enlightenment, which is also totally non-existent from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are totally non-existent from their own side to that enlightenment, which is totally non-existent from its own side, by myself alone, who is also totally non-existent from its own side. And the long life prayers for His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling Jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And for Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the 3 jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. I'd also like to dedicate to Kathleen Rafat in San Diego, who's recovering from cancer surgery, and Norma Harris and Cindy Finfrock being treated for stage 4 colon cancer in my area, and Peter Kay in Vermont, who is passing away of pancreatic cancer. And all the other people with COVID, may they be released from that illness instantly. May COVID be eliminated from our planet as quickly as possible. And I'd like to dedicate to more enlightened leadership in our country as soon as possible. Thank you, my dears. We can unmute and say goodnight. I hope this has been helpful. This was a really light intro. I just wanted to start to move in, but we're going to go more into Tantra in the next couple of days.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Tomorrow.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Venerable.
Could I also just make a quick note for anyone still on? If you're not attending the weekend and you wish to make a dana, an offering to Venerable Amy, Sunny had posted a link in the chat area for that as well, and we pass on 100% in case you wish to do so. And so, thank you, Venerable Amy. Thank you, Sunny. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
You have a beautiful voice, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you.
Very pleasing when you do your
Chris,
prayers.
you let folks know?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I was talking to Chris from Unity Forum. I didn't know if you let any of your folks know about the weekend.
I did not. Yes, just one. He should be on here. Only one person is willing to attend.
Oh.
I think Eric is on here somewhere.
Oh, that's sweet. Cool. Wonderful. I wish you all the best.
Okay, thank you. We'll see you in
Hi
the
to your
morning.
family.
I will. Love.
Lovely seeing all the rest of you as well.
I let all my Kadampa friends know, but I don't see them most of the time here.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I know they've got some other programs that. And Maureen, how is Alex doing?
Oh, she's doing great.
Looking well.
We're expecting the engagement anytime now. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Somebody I met when she was 11 at Milarepa Center. Oh my goodness. Well, that happened really quickly in a way. And are you still in North Carolina?
I am. I'm up by the Virginia, very north.
Okay.
North Carolina. Yes, I am. Yeah.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Good night, you guys.
Good night.